Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. Today we review Hellraiser. Demons to some, angels to others.
We have such sights to show you.
Directed by Clive Barker, based on his novella, The Hellbound Heart, this movie stars Clare Higgins, Ashley Laurence, Andrew Robinson, Sean Chapman, and Doug Bradley. This movie is about the Cotton family. We have Larry the father, Julia the new stepmom, Kirsty the daughter, and fun-loving Uncle Frank. They go to their family home and they find out that Frank is missing. This looks just like an abandoned house, and Frank had just been squatting there. But we know he was playing with a puzzle box and he's been sucked into hell somehow.
The Cenobites gave me an experience beyond the limits. Pain and pleasure.
And now he's trying to fight his way back to be part of the living by getting Julia to do his bidding and provide blood for him so he can grow skin. This is a recommendation from Mr. Awesome over on Patreon. He noticed that we hadn't done any of the Hellraiser movies, which is very true. And I've seen this movie so many times, but I don't know why we just didn't cover this. This and like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Nightmare on Elm Street. So thank you, Mr. Awesome, for the recommendation. It's nice to finally do this for the channel. We will be talking full spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But what do we like?
I absolutely loved the look and character designs of the Cenobites. I just thought that like the way the torture scenes were played out, just the way flesh was ripping off of the bones, everything looked so good.
We'll tear your soul apart.
So Frank is basically living under floorboards to some degree and sucking up the blood from Larry after he's moving a bed upstairs. He didn't pivot quite hard enough, or maybe too hard, and cut his hand, and he drips blood onto the floorboards. And Frank is now just sucking up all that energy, and you just start to see him like grow a little bit, especially after like Julia brings in another guy, because we find out that Julia was cheating on Larry with Frank. She loves this guy. She's obsessed with him, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to put skin on those bones so she can get back on those bones.
Every drop of blood you spill puts more flesh on my bones.
It's a very weird story, and Julia is actually the evil bitch, not Pinhead. Pinhead, everyone's like, oh, he's the antagonist. Absolutely not. It's Julia.
The whole like introduction into like the reveal of Julia banging Frank, I thought was like hilarious, because like they're throwing in match cuts of Larry like grunting as he's forcing the mattress. Then it cuts to like Julia and Frank banging, and the shot of like the nail. You look at it like, is this a symbolism for like she's getting nailed by him?
But then it's also like foreshadowing, because he's gonna cut his hand on that nail. And then there's Pinhead, who's got nails in his head. Right after Julia kills the first guy, because she just like goes to the bar, picks up dudes, brings them home to feed Frank.
He's gotta dig his fingers into them.
It's gross. But like, remember when he like lifts his brain off the floor and he starts becoming like kind of okay? Like he's goopy, and there's just so much goop all over the place. The practical effects are awesome. But the creature design of the Cenobites themselves are also awesome.
No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
I'm a big fan of the Chatterer. I think he's probably the coolest one. I know people will be like, no, it's Pinhead, you dummy. But I think Chatterer is cool.
Yeah, well, you know what? He's not even Pinhead in this one. He's lead. And that's what's interesting about this one. Pinhead's not really in this. The main focus is on Frank and Julia, and for people who are walking into the franchise, I think that's going to be a big shocker for them.
This kind of reminds me of how people jumping into Friday the 13th would be. They're like, wait, isn't there supposed to be a guy with a mask? In your mind, you're going to think it's different. I mean, a lot of you probably have already seen this, but I do think that it could put some people off. But I love the imagination that goes into this. I mean, if you've seen any of Clive Barker's work before, he's got such a cool imagination. I remember, I think my first big experience, aside from Hellraiser movies, was Clive Barker's collaboration with the Todd McFarlane toys back in the day. Just like the way that he comes up with like these designs is so cool. Like even the girl, the female, their words, not mine. I would call her the woman. She's got like just these wires coming out of her mouth holding her throat open. And Butterball, he's just got these weird little goggles. He's creepy. He's got his stomach kind of ripped open. Chatterer doesn't even have eyes. He just like chatters his teeth all the time. And then Pinhead's the only one who can kind of vocalize things.
Well, female as
She
well.
talks, but you know, she's talking through that thing. They're just so cool. And even just throughout the movie where Kirsty's finally like onto everything, she sees Frank and she's like, what the hell is going on here? She grabs the little event configuration, which I also don't think they call it that in this movie. But she throws it out the window and she ends up like blacking out and going to a hospital, and she opens it and the wall just opens and she just goes into it. And I just think that's cool because it just like breaks reality. And you know immediately, just like how there was chains and stuff up in that room for a while.
When like the walls split, it just like reminds me of like Beetlejuice. Just draw the door and then like go right through. When you sit back and look at it, it's very like rinse and repeat. It's like Julia brings someone up here to kill. Julia brings someone up here to kill. Julia brings someone up here to kill. And then we have our showdown. So like for something where not a lot is happening, I wasn't necessarily bored. I was intrigued by this whole story, even though it was just the same thing over and over again.
And I really do think that like the style of it has a lot to do with it. There's even just like some of the camera moves were interesting that if you pay attention to just the cinematography, you'll really like it.
And like when we're talking about like Julia's character, it was someone who you really disliked. I think that's what a lot of the intrigue was for me. It was like, I really can't wait to see what's gonna happen to Julia. I hope something terrible happens to her. In the interest of like, well, when's Frank gonna be revealed? Like, what's gonna happen here? And there's that moment where you see like Larry going up in there and you're like, oh, is this the moment? And it's not, but that's what I think made this film fun, was you're just waiting for something to happen.
Even though things are happening, you're waiting for the ultimate thing to happen. You want Julia to be exposed for being the scumbag that she is, and everybody see Frank for who he is. And well, Frank actually wins that battle and ends up killing Larry and wears his skin. And that's just so creepy. I don't know how Kirsty was so oblivious to him. The guy's got clearly like skin falling off of his face. There's bloody patches at the side of his hairline. And she's just hugging him like, oh, thank God it's you, Dad.
And he's just like, come to daddy.
Come to daddy.
That's when she was like, okay, what the hell? Crazy, it's crazy. And finally, after like Kirsty talking to the Cenobites and saying, hey, I know you have sights to show me, but like, I have something to show you. I'll show you Frank. He's at my house, I saw him.
Nobody escapes us.
And they like just go back there and end up getting Frank and ripping him apart.
Yep, and then she solves the puzzle box and gets away.
Then the house burns down.
Yep.
Oh yeah, with those effects though. You gotta love those like cheesy 80s effects.
Yeah. Oh.
Where it's like almost hand-drawn like electricity lines. I love that. And then the house burns down and the homeless man that was eating crickets earlier comes back, catches on fire, grabs the puzzle box, and turns into some big-ass bone dragon. What the fuck? Like, if that doesn't say that this series needs more movies, I don't know what does, because there's a lot of unanswered questions here, and it just makes you need and crave more. Like Frank to some degree. Just don't kill anyone for it. Now, what didn't we like?
I actually kind of didn't like the homeless man perspective of the film. If this was a standalone or however it was represented, I would be more upset at the fact that it's like, okay, what tie does this homeless man have to Kirsty? Because like, you see him early on, you see him in the pet shop, but like, she doesn't have the puzzle box. There really should be no connection there if this guy is like the guardian of the box or the deliverer of the box, you know?
Yeah, because that's what you have to assume. Like, he has some tie to it. He needs to go get the box and bring it back to the guy who's selling it somewhere else. But there's no connection, so him like kind of like creeping on her makes no sense. And that's whatever. There's a lot that's not gonna make sense in this kind of movie. But it is one of those open-ended things where you're like, I'd like to know more.
And I think I wanted more Cenobites. I feel like you have something so cool, it should be showcased more often. And I know that may be the case later on down the line, but this is this film.
And not all movies would I agree with you on this. Like, there are certain movies like Halloween, for example. I don't want to see Michael Myers all the time. I like the stalking, creepy aspect. But in this movie, these creatures are the showcase piece. And you want to see them kind of do more because they don't really do anything. Doug Bradley delivers a few cool lines, which is great. Like, the side Cenobite characters don't really play a large part or do anything. Like, Chatterer's the closest when he just has a plastic bag on his head and it's like pulled off and scares Kirsty, and that's it.
Yeah,
the other ones don't do anything.
It's not like if they were in it the entire film, then it would make it better, because that's not what the story's about. And I understand that. It's just, you kind of want to see more cool things. That's all.
We get that the story is like not about them, but you want to see more. Of course you do. I want to see more people's faces getting ripped apart. Or how what they say, souls. That's not a soul getting ripped apart. That's a whole ass man. Now it's time for our final thoughts and ratings. Hellraiser is a pretty solid movie. It introduces us to the world of the Cenobites, and there's a lot of practical effects and just like cool goopy stuff. The whole idea about Julia cheating on Larry with Frank and then killing people so that she can bring him back and do it all over again is just so messed up. She's just so evil. This is one of those movies that I feel there's a lot of symbolism going on. I'm not smart enough to talk about all that stuff, but what I did see, I enjoyed, and it's a movie that I've revisited many times, and I'll probably watch again. I'll give it 4 Attack on Titan looking asses out of 5.
I absolutely loved the practical effects, the makeup, the creature design. Visually, it was fantastic. I really liked how they developed Julia and Frank's character, because they're the villains. They're the ones who you can't wait to see what's gonna happen with them, and that's where the intrigue comes into play. I just felt like there's certain things missing that I would have liked to see more of, which later on in the franchise that does happen when you focus on things like the puzzle box and how easy Kirsty was able to like use it at the end. You're like, okay, well, Frank clearly didn't have that good of a time and needed all his research, and she's just like a Rubik's Cube expert. There's small aspects of the story that you're just like, I think that's a little too ridiculous, but overall, it was a good film. It was a good time. So with that being said, I give this film 3.5 cool dude introductions out of 5.
I'm Frank. I'm Brother Frank.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you have any and do want to check it out, links are in the description. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, stay up to date with everything here on Bloodbath and Beyond.
What's your pleasure, sir?